So my next project is more boxes. This was my test box, meaning I needed a box to try and make sure that my box joint jig was still working. And the important bit for here is I needed to, since the other two boxes, which I'll cover in a bit, didn't have, well, I forgot to put them 3/8 of an inch higher than requested, because that way I could do this kind of a box lid where you just do the slot and then it just fits down in like on the last set of boxes. I forgot to do that, so for these three I instead used this, the Stumac plunge router, with this kind of a flat router bit, and there it is there with the dremel, and I was able to cut the, well, first I got the slot set up with the table saw, then I used the router to make it all perfectly smooth, then I used my drum sander and pieces of the oak pallet to trim down and fit so that this way there's a gap, so that gives me space to cut the side with the bandsaw and then have a little gap above this and glue that down in, and then that let me use that as the inside of the lid. And the benefit of doing it this way is I have an equivalent joint to this, except the piece that's sticking up is the little piece of oak that I inset versus original pieces of the lid. And also for my test box, well, for all of the three boxes, let me back up. I do not recommend doing it this way unless you absolutely have to, because it is so much more work. Because when you, at least the way I did it with the table saw, when you cut the lid slot, it makes 4 holes that you can kind of see there that you have to inset with little hand cut pieces of this, using that Japanese saw, chisel, and miter box. So I do not recommend using this method unless you absolutely have to. For those two boxes, I forgot to add a 3/8 of an inch when I cut all the sides, so I would have lost 3/8 of an inch in height to use this method. So I figured, okay, what can I do to get an equivalent without having to put an entire layer inside the box to hold the lid? And I figured, alright, if I cut a slot like this, have a piece of oak inset to take the place of this little piece that sticks up, then I can put the lid on like normal if I just cut it off with the bandsaw. So that worked, but again, I don't recommend this unless you absolutely have to, because the standard way I was doing this with the cutting the slots for lid and top with the table saw and then putting the lid in made 8 little custom holes per box. This method causes 8 per side. That is way more custom cutting and fitting, and that takes so long, because making these little tiny pieces to fit in each little hole, so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 per side. That just took forever. It worked, but it took forever. So again, I'm only going to use that if I forget to make the lid height, and I will try really hard not to forget the lid height from now on. So here's the pieces left over from the bottom. I had a piece of the oak pallet, and then a little piece of plywood that I had left over that I had been using for the bottoms of the other boxes, and then another piece of pallet, and then this one, pallet, poplar. This is a piece of this that's reddish. I'm not sure if this is walnut or mahogany or something, but then a piece of oak pallet, walnut or mahogany, poplar, and then oak pallet again. So that is what I used for the top, and that is what I used for the bottom. So you can see that's the piece of the oak pallet, the original thickness, And you can see here, the box is thinner. I had trimmed this down with the sander to try and test things. And I also did a test one that's really thin. The piece that had some wormholes. Most of this did not have that, but I figured that might be cool to make something with that and then fill those in with epoxy or something. But in any case, so this was my test box to make sure that my box joint jig worked still and didn't get bumped, which it works just fine. It was also a test to make sure this was going to work, and it came out really nice. So we'll show you the sides first. So the sides look good. All the little inset pieces. Some are darker than others. It all depends on which wood it's next to. And then the top worked really nice. You can see that the darker strips have shiny bits that show up depending on the light. But that's kind of cool. It works even better in the sunlight, but I'm in the garage. And the bottom. So that's that one. And the way to open this, yeah, I should show that. So the way to open this that works best is hold on each side with your thumb and then lift up the lid. I don't know that I can do this with one hand. This one might work with one hand. The other two, the lids are a little bit tighter. Come on, nope, not gonna work. Oh, maybe. Oh, yep, okay. So you can see the inside. Oh, and I managed to put little thin pieces of oak super glued in and stuff. I used a wood burner to do that. Come on, focus. So that's kind of cool. So I finally figured that out. So here you can see the piece, how it's inset, and it ends up working out nice. Oh, and the one other thing, since these are a little bit challenging to figure out, initially I was going to just say, okay, it fits best if the stripes match the stripe on the bottom, but then I realized if you have stuff in the box, you're not going to be able to say which side that was. So then I figured, alright, I'll do a dot on each side, and then I realized, well, that's not ideal either. It would be better to figure out, which side it goes on so that the grain all matches up. So then I put 2 dots on the inside of the bottom there and 1 dot there, so you just match up the dots, and that's how it closes. But yeah, that's how that ends up working. And the lid goes back on pretty nice. No gaps in the, well, assuming it focuses on that part. No gaps on the box joints. Nice small gap for the lid. So the other 2 boxes I made, or people had requested, I'll show them one at a time. So here's this one. This is the one that Cynsa wanted. Cynsa wanted a 9 inches, wait, no, she wanted a 12 inches long by 6 inches high by 5 inches wide. So, let's see, I'm trying to get the light on it without too much glare. But yeah, this one came out really nice too. Ended up using the gloss, mostly the triple thick clear gloss polyurethane. That dries nice, so I really like that, and it dries thicker. So for the bottom of this one, I had a piece of, well, the sides for this is oak from a dresser I took apart, and the bottom was a piece from a different dresser. It's a set of poplar. So the actual edges from this that I had trimmed off this outside are what I used for the edges in this lid. But that came out really nice. That looks really good. This one, the top is from the kitchen door, So that was the oak plywood from the kitchen door, and that worked out nice. So this one, unfortunately, I cannot use one hand. So let me see if I can set up the stand so this will work. So for this, assuming that's still in focus, you just grab the box with your thumbs and the lid lifts right up. Again, hands, fingers, lid comes up. Otherwise, it's tight enough that sometimes you can pick it up, but you normally don't want to pick up a box and have it go that way. So for this one, again, I put the little badge thing in, and that looks like it should work fine. So again, you can see the inset edge. And then for these side bits, this is actually thinner than here, so I don't know if it can, yeah, you can kind of see. So I slanted it up with the sander and planes, but that ended up working. So yeah, the bottom inside looks nice. All the sides inside look nice. So, and again, this one instead of having the 2 dots, I realized, okay, I'll do a single dot there and then figure out which end. You can see a single dot there and there. So then that going down lets the grain all match up. So there's that one. And then this box was for Derek, and Derek said that he wanted a 12-inch long by 9 inches by 4 inches. So this one looks good too. Same kind of nice tight joints. You can see the grain ends up looking really pretty on these. Oops. Trying not to get the glare. And you can see some of the inset pieces look darker than others. Like there's an inset piece here and here, and this one's darker than that one. But here's an inset piece that almost blends in. I guess it doesn't on the camera as much, but in person it almost blends in. But yeah, so that's all nice. And then there's this piece. So this finished up basically the last of the oak plywood, and this was the last piece of the fancier plywood that I used for one of the other boxes that I did before. But yeah, it looks nice. But again, this one, take your hands, thumbs on the lid, and it lifts up. This one is a tighter fit than Cynsa's box, so it's gonna be challenging. But again, fingers and hands and thumbs like that, and it's tight, but it loosens up and comes up. It works better from the ends than it does from the sides because there's slightly more give in one of the directions than the other. But yeah, again, got the little badge thing and the inside. So yeah, it all looks good. So again, on this side you can see here's the little pieces of oak like that, but it ends up blending in fairly nice. So I mean, some spots you can see where the grain doesn't quite match, but it still looks really pretty. So I think they're gonna really like it. Yeah, so that's the current set of, oh, and again with these I have the 1 dot. I think that's on camera. Yeah, so that's the 1 dot. So then you line that up, and when you put it in, then the grain all matches up, and it ends up being a nice edge. So yeah, this one also came out nice. So all the current set of boxes came out really nice, and now I need to come up with my next project. But in any case, those are ready to go. This one is ready to go. I think I know who this is, who's getting this one. They don't know yet, but I think I know who's getting this one. And so yeah, that should be good. So Cynsa and Derek, I think you're really gonna, well, Cynsa and Derek, I think you're gonna really enjoy your boxes, and we'll go from there. But yep, that's where we're at. That's the latest project. Oh, I guess one last thing for the people who like some of this stuff. Not everybody does. Some people zone out, but for doing the sides for those slots, I just drew a picture and then figured out where exactly I wanted on the board to go, and then lined up my fence and ran it on the table saw, and then just made notes of each of the cuts that I did. And then what that let me do is, once the box is all glued up and the slot's on the inside, I could measure where the slot would be, and then I knew where to cut from the outside when I cut it through with the bandsaw. So I did something similar with Cynsa and Derek's lids. But yeah, that's the project. That's the successful project. And I really like all the tools that I've gotten so far. I especially like this plunge router base. This is what the StewMac plunge router base, they use this for guitars and working on guitars and things. And it actually has a little light. Come on. You worked before. There we go. So it has a little light. So that way it works really nice to do. Oh, yeah, there we go. It turns off. But yeah, that works great with this again, because that let me do a nice consistent slot, and you can see it's nice and smooth. Well, assuming that shows up, I think it does. It's nice and smooth. And this was my test box, or test cut for both of the other boxes, the 4-inch high box and the 5-inch high box, so that way I could make sure that this was going to work. Again, just goes in and works perfect. So that is the video. That is the project. That is a really cool test box.